Good morning, afternoon, and evening to you, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Global Brief. This is our daily explainer from OneRead.news, where we piece together the puzzle of global events. Today, we've got 18 headlines from the last 24 hours that, on the surface, look completely random. Our job? To find the story that connects them all.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. You know how it is, every single day it feels like we're just getting hit with this tidal wave of news. A summit over here, a protest over there, another crisis somewhere else. It's just chaotic, right? It feels like none of it is connected. But what if it is? What if all 18 of today's biggest stories are actually just different, scattered pieces of one giant, very complicated global puzzle? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to lay out all those pieces, look at the high-stakes power plays, pull on the economic levers that make everything move, and, most importantly, see the very real human consequences of it all. So, what is the real story hiding behind all that noise? Let's figure it out together.
All right. First stop, we're heading to the global chessboard. Now, this is the big arena of high-stakes diplomacy. It's a place where every single public statement, every handshake, and, maybe most importantly, every silence is a calculated move. It's all about gaining an advantage. And let me tell you, today, that board is absolutely buzzing with action.
First up, let's talk about the Kremlin. There's a new peace summit on the table, and Russia's public response is, well, it's a masterclass in being strategically vague. The official line is that any prep work requires, and I quote, utmost care. Now, on the surface, that sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? Who wouldn't want utmost care? But the real game here isn't about what's being said, it's about what this achieves. By being so deliberately non-committal, by not giving a clear yes or no, Russia basically grabs the steering wheel for the whole process. They get to control the timeline. They give themselves room to slide in their own preconditions down the road. It's a classic power play, all dressed up to look like caution. It's how you make sure that if talks ever do happen, they're going to happen on your terms.
And here is the perfect flip side to that move on the chessboard. While Russia is playing it cool, you've got two major European countries, Switzerland and Austria, stepping right up. They're basically rolling out the welcome mat, offering to host these potential talks. But, and this is a huge but, they are offering to host Vladimir Putin, a man who has an active arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. This really gets to a fundamental conflict in foreign policy, this clash between international law and this concept called Realpolitik. It's a fancy term, but it just means dealing with the world as it is, not as you wish it was. And it forces this incredibly tough question. Do you stick to the letter of the law and refuse to meet with someone who's been indicted? Or do you invite that person to the table because it might, just might, be the only way to end a war? There's no easy, clean answer here, and you can see Europe wrestling with that exact problem in real time.
Now, this diplomatic chess game isn't just for enemies. Sometimes the sharpest moves happen between old friends. A very public, very tense spat has just blown up between Israel and France. The Israeli prime minister accused the French president of fueling anti-Semitic fire. I mean, that is an incredibly serious charge, and the French government immediately shot back, calling it erroneous. So why this public fight, and why now? Well, the piece of context you absolutely need to know is that France is reportedly just about to officially recognize a Palestinian state. So that raises a big question. Is this war of words really about what was said? Or is it a preemptive diplomatic strike by Israel to try and control the narrative before France makes its big move?
And while the big powers are doing their thing, other nations are making their own moves, kind of realigning themselves on the board. Let's look at these three stories together, because they all share a common thread. They are all reactions to outside pressure. First, in Asia. The US is putting economic pressure on India with new tariffs. We'll talk more about those in a minute. And who's stepping into that opening? China. Beijing and New Delhi are suddenly having deeper talks about border trade and, crucially, about supply chains. China sees a window here to pull its giant neighbor just a little bit closer and maybe weaken some of those US-led alliances. Then you've got the Korean Peninsula, a story we all know well. The US and South Korea are running military drills. They say they're defensive, but in Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un sees an invasion rehearsal. And his response? It's straight out of the North Korean playbook. Speed up the nuclear weapons program. It is a direct response to what he sees as a provocation. And finally, down in South America, Venezuela's President Maduro is mobilizing millions of civilians into a militia, citing these vague threats from the US. It's a classic rally around the flag move, right? Meant to project strength at home when you feel threatened from abroad. So you've got three different regions, three different kinds of moves. Economic, military, domestic, but all driven by that same core instinct to push back against pressure from the big guys.
And you know, this chessboard isn't just international. Some of the biggest power plays happen right inside a country's own government. Case in point, the The current U.S. administration has just revoked the security clearances for a bunch of former officials. The one thing they all have in common? Many have been very public critics of the president. Now, a security clearance is supposed to be a tool for national security, right? It's about who gets to see the secrets. But this move, it looks a lot like that tool is being weaponized for political reasons. The message it sends to anyone else in the government is frankly chillingly clear. If you speak out, if you criticize, you'll be cut off. You'll be silenced. It's a raw power play designed to enforce loyalty and control the story, not just on TV, but inside the actual halls of power.
You see, every single one of those moves on the geopolitical chessboard, they're all funded and fueled by something just as powerful: money. Economics, trade, these are the quiet levers that can build a nation up, that can shift an alliance, or that can bring a whole country to its knees. So let's follow the money and see how those levers are being pulled right now.
Remember those US tariffs that were kind of pushing India towards China? Well, here's the full story. That policy just got a massive expansion. We're talking 407 new product categories. This isn't just about raw steel anymore. This is about finished goods, like metal furniture, even huge stuff like bulldozers. And this sets off a really simple but potentially dangerous economic chain reaction. Step 1, the tariffs get imposed. They're basically just a tax on things coming into the country. Step 2, the companies that import these goods, they pass that extra cost right on to you, the customer. So prices for everything from a new desk to a bulldozer, they go up. Step 3, and what do we all do when prices rise? We tighten our belts. We buy less, we save more, consumer spending drops. And finally, step 4, when people stop buying stuff, the whole economic engine slows down, and the risk of a recession starts to climb. And it all started with that one lever getting pulled.
So, we just looked at a government policy affecting the economy from the top down. Now let's look at a force that shapes it from the bottom up: people power. Over in Canada, a huge strike by Air Canada workers that left thousands of people stranded, well, it's finally over. They've reached a tentative deal. Now, for anyone who was stuck at an airport, it was a total nightmare for sure. But the bigger story here is what this shows us about the power of organized labor. In this post-pandemic economy, we are seeing unions flex their muscles in a way we haven't seen in decades. This deal is proof positive that these groups still have serious leverage. I mean, think about it. They have the power to literally ground a country's flagship airline, to bring a huge part of the economy to a standstill until their demands are finally met.
And while we're on the topic of money, let's look at something potentially revolutionary being discussed in Brazil. The country's legislature is holding public hearings on a pretty wild idea: a bill that would let them take up to 5% of their national treasury, we're talking the country's main savings account, and use it to buy Bitcoin. Now this could signal a massive shift in global finance. Usually we talk about Bitcoin as this speculative thing for individuals to buy, but this is a national government seriously looking at it as a tool of the state. Why? They're looking for a hedge against inflation, something that might hold its value if their own currency gets weaker. For a lot of developing nations that have struggled with unstable currencies, the idea of a digital asset that no single government controls is looking more and more interesting. This could be a huge moment for crypto.
Okay, we've talked about grand strategy, we've talked about massive economic forces, but it is so important to remember that these high-level decisions, these moves on the chessboard, they have deep, real-world consequences. So now we're going to shift our focus to humanity on the front lines, to the direct and often tragic human cost of all these events. And the tone here is going to get more serious, because this is the part of the story that absolutely has to be told.
383. Let's just let that number sit there for a second. That's not a stock price, it's not some economic data point. According to the United Nations, 383 is the number of humanitarian aid workers who have been killed around the world so far in 2024. It is a devastating, heartbreaking new record. Almost half of those deaths happened in Gaza. These are the helpers. These are the people who run into the crisis when everyone else is running out. This isn't just a number, it's a giant flashing red light on the dashboard of international law. The most basic, fundamental rule of any conflict is that you protect civilians and the people trying to help them. And this number tells us with no uncertainty that this rule is being shattered at an alarming and unprecedented rate.
And that horrifying theme, that theme of targeting people who should be protected, continues right into this next story. In northern Nigeria, gunmen stormed a mosque during evening prayers, opened fire, and killed at least 27 people. A mosque, a church, a hospital, an aid convoy. These are supposed to be sacred spaces, safe havens, even in the middle of a conflict. And an attack on a place of worship, during prayer, that is a uniquely cruel kind of terror. It's designed not just to kill bodies, but to kill hope, to shatter a community's deepest sense of safety,
and to pour gasoline on religious tensions. It is a direct assault on the very fabric of a society.
You know, sometimes tragedy isn't just one single event. Sometimes it's a terrible cascade where one crisis just slams right into another. Just look at these two stories. First, in Afghanistan, a horrific bus crash has killed at least 71 people. But here's the layer tragedy. The bus was full of Afghan migrants who had just been forcibly deported from Iran. Just think about that for a second. Forced out of one country, only to die on a dangerous road in their own. It's a tragedy built on top of a crisis. And then, in Somalia, a diphtheria outbreak is spiraling out of control. Diphtheria. This is a preventable disease. We've had a vaccine for it for 100 years. But health officials are warning that years and years of conflict and state collapse have completely destroyed the country's healthcare system. It's created the perfect storm for a preventable disease to come roaring back. These aren't just random disasters. They are the direct symptoms of much bigger systemic failures.
But amidst all this darkness, there are at least some efforts to find a pause. We're getting details of a proposed 60-day truce between Israel and Hamas. This table lays out the basic deal that's on the table. In exchange for Hamas releasing 10 living hostages, Israel would release 1,700 Palestinian prisoners. Israel would also allow a huge surge in humanitarian aid and pull back its forces from parts of Gaza. It's an incredibly complicated, delicate balance they're trying to strike. But there's a huge glaring ingredient missing from this recipe. This whole negotiation is about a temporary pause, a truce. It doesn't seem to address any of the root causes of the conflict, and it doesn't lay out any kind of path toward a permanent peace. And that missing piece, that's the one thing that makes it feel like this whole thing could just boil over again the second those 60 days are up.
For our final theme of the day, we're going to turn inward. We're going to look at how different societies all over the world are struggling with their own internal challenges, to their laws, to their norms, to the very way they define liberty and community. How are the rules of the game changing at home?
Let's start at the Amazon Summit, happening in Bogota, Colombia. Here, you have indigenous leaders from 8 different Amazonian nations, and they have come together not to ask for something, but to demand it. Their message couldn't be clearer. They are calling for full legal protection for their ancestral lands and a complete and total ban on any new oil and mining projects in those territories. The argument they're making is so simple and so powerful. The best people to protect the Amazon rainforest, the lungs of our planet, are the people who have been living there sustainably for generations. They're not just asking for a seat at the table anymore. They're demanding the legal power to protect the land that, frankly, sustains all of us.
Now let's jump over to one of the biggest cities on Earth. Mexico City is starting this massive project to install over 30,000 new surveillance cameras. The goal? To become the most surveilled city in all of the Americas, all in an effort to stop crime. This slide just perfectly captures the huge trade-off that's at the very heart of this plan. On one side, you have the promise of security. On the other, you have the potential cost to civil liberties and personal privacy. The government is making a giant bet that this technological blanket of cameras is going to make its citizens safer. But the question every single person there has to ask is, at what price? It is the absolute classic security versus privacy dilemma playing out on the massive scale of a city with over 20 million people.
And for our final story, we go to Norway. It's a story that shows how even the most stable societies, the most respected institutions, can be shaken right to their foundations. Marius Borg Heiby, who is the son of Norway's crown princess, has been formally charged with multiple serious offenses, including 4 counts of rape. Now, this is so much more than a celebrity scandal. It's a really profound test of a modern monarchy's ability to handle a massive legal and PR crisis. How does an institution that's built on tradition, on image, on public trust, how does it handle criminal allegations this severe against someone in its own inner circle? The whole world is going to be watching to see if justice is truly blind, even when royalty is in the mix.
So, there we have it. We've traveled all over the globe today, from the intricate moves of diplomatic chess to the economic chain reactions that affect us all, down to the front lines of human tragedy and the shifting rules of our own societies. And it all kind of brings us back to this one idea, this quote, fostering thinkers, not followers. That's really the whole point of what we do here. The goal is never, ever to tell you what to think. It's to give you the pieces of the puzzle, the context, the connections, so you can put that picture together for yourself and you can draw your own conclusions.
And that's our whole mission at OneRead.news. We want to provide this dedicated space for factual, condensed news, far away from all the emotional spin and the 24/7 noise machine. We really believe that by just giving you the facts, clearly and concisely, we can empower you to form your own clear understanding of what's happening in the world. It's a different way to do news, and it's one we're really committed to. Now, to stay completely independent from any corporate or government influence, this will eventually become a subscription-based service, but for right now, it is totally free for everyone. When we do make that change, it'll be for a small fee, just to make sure that your news stays pure and unbiased. If you value this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense approach, we really hope you'll stick around with us. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We will be back with the next Global Brief tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. GMT.
If you found this useful, honestly, the single best thing you can do to support us is just to share it with your friends and family. Your support really helps us cut through all that noise. Also, please don't forget to follow our daily updates on Instagram. Our handle is @global.oneread. And please follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. GMT. Thanks for watching.